President Buhari asked Governor Ambode to ensure no repetition of Lagos building collapse. Federal government bans operations of Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft. In international news, UK Parliament rejects Prime Minister's Brexit deal and no-deal Brexit, voting today on extending Brexit date. And in sport, International Association of Athletics Federation releases tougher entry standard for Nigeria athletes ahead of Tokyo 2020.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatuji. 6 persons have lost their lives while 14 others sustained varying degrees of injuries in a multiple road crash on the Enugu-Onitsha Expressway. The Federal Road Safety Corps Sector Commander in Anambra State, Kunapai Adodele, said 20 persons were involved in the accident which occurred late afternoon on Wednesday. Adodele says the driver of an articulated vehicle loaded with kerosene lost control and rammed into 7 other vehicles at Trackers Motor Park along the Upper Weka Road. Fatality wounded 6. State Chairman of the Nigerian Red Cross Society, Peter Koch, says the organization has evacuated 7 corpses to a hospital morgue. The Lagos State government has confirmed 16 persons, including 12 children, died in Tuesday's Lagos building collapse. 11 children have been identified. 41 persons are currently receiving treatment in various hospitals in the city. The children, most of whom are pupils of Ohid Nursery Primary School located on the top floor of the building. Meanwhile, Lagos State Governor Kumi Ambode visited the scene on Wednesday and blamed the owner of the collapsed building for refusing to vacate the building government had slated for demolition. The governor said the state government would take care of the hospital bills of those injured in the incident.
We'll be undergoing a lot of integrity tests with the buildings in this neighborhood. And as you can see, some of them have been marked for demolition. We get resistance from landlords, but we must continue to save life and we'll intensify our efforts to see that those that have failed our integrity test, we'll make sure that they are quickly evacuated and we'll bring these structures down.
On another note, President Muhammad Buhari has charged Governor Ambode to ensure such catastrophic accidents does not happen again in the state. The federal government has joined the rest of the world in banning Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft from operating in Nigeria. Minister of State for Aviation, Hadi Sirika, announced the government's decision after global outrage that followed the crash of Ethiopian Airlines MAX 8 plane on Sunday. Ambassador Biodun Bashir and Professor Pius Adesomi were on the ill-fated flight in which all 157 passengers and crew died.
Regardless of the enormous safety records by these machines, 737, it has caused concern for the world of aviation. So we have issued directives that no operator with 737 MAX 8 or MAX 9 should operate into and outside of our airports.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control has been working to control communicable diseases, including Lassa fever, in the country for some time. Lassa fever has received lots of attention lately as some deaths were reported. But latest data show the country has been able to control the number of casualties from the disease. Kelechi Emekalam reports.
The latest on this year's Lassa fever outbreak. Nigeria has been suffering a Lassa fever outbreak almost every year since the disease was identified some 50 years back. 21 of its 36 states, including the federal capital Abuja, have registered confirmed cases. The Center for Disease Control says infection rate had started falling until early March, but the past week has recorded a new surge in number of cases. That's besides the case fatality falling from 26% to 22%.
So far this year, we've had 93 deaths. That brings our case fatality ratio, i.e. the number of people that have died from Lassa, to closer to 20%. It was 20%. Last few weeks, we had a number of deaths that has got taken up to 22. But last year, we had 25 to 26%. So achieving a 4% reduction in deaths associated with Lassa is a big achievement.
Lassa fever is an acute hemorrhagic illness. It's primarily transmitted to humans through eating food contaminated with rat urine or feces. The disease can also be spread from human to human through direct contact with the blood, urine or feces of an infected person, and it could kill very fast if not treated early.
Edo State, that has the largest number of cases of Lassa, they have the lowest proportion of deaths from patients that have Lassa fever. How come the state with the highest number of cases has the lowest proportion of deaths? Because sensitization has happened there, doctors are thinking about it earlier, bringing in patients into care earlier, and therefore enabling case management to occur earlier.
Lassa fever is rampant in the West African region. Apart from Nigeria, countries like Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Liberia, Mali and Sierra Leone suffer regular outbreaks. Nigeria has been pursuing a vaccine for the disease. It now says trials will begin this year and Nigeria will be among several other countries where human testing will be conducted.
You are watching ANN.
Looking for some Disney magic but don't know where to find it? We've got a magical solution just for you. Simply go to DisneyNigeria.mobi and get an exciting selection of games, short videos, wallpapers, shareables, and more. Explore a whole new world of Disney on your mobile, tablet, or PC. For just 200 Naira monthly, you get to enjoy the fun to infinity and beyond. SMS Disney to 11006 to begin. Terms and conditions apply. This service is only available to MTN customers.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. Relatives of the victims of Ethiopian Airlines crash flew from all over the world to assemble in Addis Ababa from where they were driven to the crash site. Some of them touched the ground where their loved ones perished. They sobbed and wailed. Now they're wondering when they would be able to bury their dead. Reporter Khalid Wanjohi tells more.
A family torn by grief, seeking any information they can to help understand how they can receive the remains of their loved ones.
We just came here. We have been assisted by both the government here and we're waiting for the embassies to come here.
Their relatives had both British and Kenyan citizenship.
British consul is coming at 3 o'clock, and already the Kenyan embassy is also here, and
At this point, however, Ethiopian Airlines is not giving any promises as to if and when they will receive the remains. In an attempt to salvage any little customer confidence it can, the chief executive officer of the airline has been visiting different terminals at the airport to personally offer assurance of safety to other travelers using the airline. Experts say this is an isolated case, and although it may scare away passengers from the airline for a while, the 73-year-old airline still commands the largest fleet and more routes than any other airline in the continent.
You know, it will take some time, like 3 months, 4 months to come up with the preliminary report.
In total, 157 people died in the crash, including crew members. Memorial services are being planned by different denominations in the city to console the families of the people who were lost.
The Norwegian Refugee Council is calling on all parties to the conflict in South Sudan to allow humanitarian agencies to safely access people in desperate need of aid as the food crisis worsens across the country. A recent report on escalating food crisis in South Sudan shows nearly 6.5 million persons are currently at risk of hunger. 1.5 million of those are facing extreme hunger. The aid agency says the peace agreement signed 5 months ago, notwithstanding, conflict continues to impact the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. The agency's latest report predicts that by July, more than 6.5 million persons, or 60% of the population, could face acute food security if aid is not increased and distributed in time. An e-commerce company, Jumia, based in Nigeria, could go public in the next month and become the first African startup to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The company, valued at $1 billion in 2016, offers a range of online goods and has now branched into food delivery, hotel and flight booking and mobile tariffs. Jumia's active consumers stood at 4 million at the end of last year. Two French entrepreneurs started Jumia in Lagos, Nigeria in 2012. It now provides services to most African countries, including South Africa, Tanzania, Egypt and Ivory Coast. Its largest shareholder is MTN, Africa's biggest telecoms company. Serving of tea and coffee at Namibia State Hospitals has been suspended. Minister of Health and Social Services, Dr. Kalumbu Shangula, says the exercise did not serve its intended purpose. Coffee and tea were served at 10 a.m., 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. But the minister said the exercise carried a significant financial cost and did not serve the purposes intended. The minister's explanation was in response to Popular Democratic Movement Member of Parliament Elma Dienda, who wanted to know the motivation behind this drastic measure. In its announcement in an internal memorandum on Monday, the ministry had attributed the suspension to financial constraints. The minister said there will be no negative impact on the patients as a result of this measure.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby. We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward. Wait, stop. You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down, keep walking to the left. Yes, you're almost here. Keep going. You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back. This is ANN News, now to world event. It was another defeat for Theresa May's Brexit plan on Wednesday in Parliament. The defeat comes only 16 days before the United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union. This has raised the question of whether Brexit will occur on the scheduled day or at all. The Parliament is due to vote again today on a last-minute Brexit delay, and Prime Minister Theresa May could seek to use the prospect of a long extension to push lawmakers to back her EU divorce deal, which has been rejected twice now in Parliament. Lawmakers defeated the Prime Minister's deal by 391 to 242. Earlier on Tuesday, the Prime Minister had laid out the potential consequences of defeat, saying if Parliament rejects her plan, then Brexit could be lost. Well, they went ahead and rejected the plan anyway, with the days counting towards Brexit and no firm agreement in place to smooth the transition. Finance Minister Philip Hammond says May's plan was back on the agenda. Donald Tusk, head of European Council, said he favored a long extension if London asked for one. One official said that means a delay of at least a year. The other 27 EU member states must agree to any extension. Away from that, hundreds of Islamic State militants accompanied by relatives have surrendered on Thursday to the Syrian Democratic Forces. The jihadists have lost ground to a U.S.-backed assault aimed at seizing the last shred of IS territory. Reuters news agency reports many of the men were limping as they crossed out of the enclave at Baghouz along a dirt plot. Children were weeping and fully veiled women were dragging suitcases and backpacks behind them. as the
Shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
The United Nations is seeking billions of dollars in additional aid for Syria, hoping to overcome fatigue among donors after 8 years of civil war and divisions over how to deal with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Nearly 12 million persons, many of them children, need emergency aid in Syria, and the UN is looking for more than $3 billion for victims there and $5.5 billion for refugees in the region. Federica Mogherini, European Union Foreign Policy Chief, said at the UN conference, the European Union, the world's biggest aid donor, does not want the people of Syria forgotten at a time when the international community seems to care a little bit less. United Nations says Syria has become the world's largest refugee crisis, with more than 5.5 million Syrians fleeing Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Egypt. Pakistan and India officials say they have held cordial discussions at the opening of a visa-free border crossing for Sikh pilgrims from India traveling to visit one of their holiest shrines located in Pakistan. The meeting on Thursday came amid easing of tensions after a deadly suicide bombing in India-administered Kashmir last month triggered a dangerous escalation between the two nuclear-armed neighbors. A joint statement said the two sides held detailed and constructive discussions, and that Pakistan and India have agreed to work toward operationalizing the crossing. India and Pakistan have a history of bitter relations since gaining independence from Britain in 1947. Poland's Catholic Church leaders are preparing to publish statistics on the abuse of minors by priests since 1990. Archbishop Stanislaw Gadecki says the documented cases are to be published during a news conference on Thursday. Church leaders in predominantly Catholic Poland have admitted to cases of abuse of minors by priests but have not revealed their number. A private foundation supporting victims of abuse has given Pope Francis a list of more than 90 court verdicts on priests and hundreds of cases of alleged abuse. Recently, a statue of a prominent Solidary era priest was removed amid allegations the late Reverend Henryk Jaworski abused minors. Jaworski was respected for his pro-democracy activities in the 1980s. Church leaders have been discussing abuse and ways of protecting children during a 3-day meeting in Warsaw.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. Nigeria's hope of fielding more athletes in track and field at the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo is now dimmer after the IAAF approved new qualification system and entry standards for intending athletes. IAAF says the council has decided to introduce a dual qualification system combining both the entry standards and the new world ranking system to determine eligible voters, or rather eligible athletes for 2020 Olympic selection. Under the new qualification process, athletes can qualify for the Olympics by either achieving the relevant entry standard within the respective qualification period or by virtue of their IAAF world ranking position in the selected events at the end of the prospective qualification period. The possible expansion of the 2022 World Cup is likely to dominate discussions when FIFA's ruling council meets in Miami on Friday. FIFA President Gianni Infantino wants to increase from 32 to 48 the number of participating teams in the football showpiece, accelerating by 4 years an expansion which has already been set for the 2026 finals. Details of an internal feasibility study by FIFA, which emerged this week, gave broad support to expanding the 2022 finals in Qatar. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit the website annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.